Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. And this is another episode of the Leuchenzee Zoo, and we are back at the tropical house in Tiki Town. If you haven't seen the last episode yet, go ahead and check that out to see the start of this building, since we will be continuing the journey of this tropical house, and today we are going to build the habitat for the adorable Quokka. And they are also going to get a indoor area, a backstage area, and of course the outdoor area. And besides that, we are also going to improve a little bit of the building itself, so you will see that too in this video. And as I said, go check out the first episode to see how I built this whole building. So let's get started. So as I said already in the last episode where we built the habitat for the koala, which was the first one to be in the tropical house, I said that we are going to build a little bit of the building and improving the building itself with every episode. So there will be 4 in total. This is the second now, so I will improve a little bit with every episode. And in this one I decided to do the windows. As you can see in the background, I used the normal windows with just this arch around from like the normal building pieces, but I quickly decided to redo them. I just put them down to have like a vision of the building, how it is going to look. But I wanted to have more detailed windows and also real windows, so there would be actual sunlight coming through the windows, and of course that you can see in and out of this building. So that was the first thing I did for this episode. So I of course took some inspiration from online to see how to rebuild the window, because just out of my head it would have been a little bit too difficult to come up with an idea. So I searched for like vintage and classic windows, and I came up or found the inspiration for this window that I'm doing right now, and I kept it really original, to be said, as much as I could do it with the building pieces we had. So I tried to do it as realistic as possible. So I pretty much copied my inspiration picture and built it for Planet Zoo basically. And the windows got a little bit too big, honestly. As you can see in the background, we have like 2 stories of the building, each with windows, but the windows I'm building right now are definitely bigger, so there will only be one huge window. But I am honestly fine with that, because I feel like in the old days where basically this building was built, people did these really big windows, and almost like in the castle when you have these ginormous windows that are like 2 or 3 meters high. So I honestly really liked the outcome, even though it is bigger than I originally wanted to, but I still really love the windows. They are really pretty. I really like this style of windows. I have multiple buildings in my like neighborhood that have similar building styles or similar windows, so I already took like a idea from those buildings in my area. But unfortunately the windows in my house don't really look like that, but I wish they would look like these, because I absolutely love them, and I feel like they turned out pretty good. And they were honestly not that hard to build. As you can see, I didn't even use that many pieces, and this little triangular arch on top was like one whole piece. I firstly wanted to do it myself too, but honestly this building piece that we have is honestly so perfect, and it was already fitting to the size of the window I was doing, so I just decided to go with it and use the normal building piece for that. Besides the windows, I didn't really do anything more for the building itself. I exchanged all the windows on the sides and at the front with the window I'm doing right now. And as you might have seen, like above the entrance, there are also smaller windows, but I cannot fit these big windows in this section because obviously there has to be a door fitting underneath. So I will do these in another episode. And besides replacing all the windows, I of course did some minor changes also to the part where the koala is, just so that I could fit the window in there and it still looks like cohesive, and so there still fits the windows in this little section. Besides then me placing the windows in the wall, I also did some minor detailing with these limestone slabs, I think they are called, to add like a little bit of detailing. Other than that, the walls are still pretty bare, so I'm still thinking about something to do. I'm probably will be looking up more inspiration for how to decorate the wall itself besides having these windows and these slabs of limestone on the sides. But yeah, we will be improving more in the next episodes, probably the other windows. Then at some point I have to make doors because the doors are still just not there at this point. And probably in the very last episode, so the fourth one, I will be doing the roof to kind of complete everything and have everything set. So that is the plan. Other than that, as I said, we will be doing the habitat for the quokka in this episode, and then there will be 2 more episodes after that. I try to do all these 4 episodes like back to back on my channel, so you can expect the next 2 habitats for the tropical house to come out in the next 2 weeks. And then I hope we have a completely finished tropical house. And then we will obviously continue, or not obviously, but we will most likely continue with the Oceania section, which I call Tiki Town. But other than that, I also have another project going on, which is the Zoo's Discord community zoo. You might have seen 2 of those episodes already on my channel, and I probably need to be building something for that pretty soon too. So I might throw in another episode of the Discord community zoo after I finish the tropical house. And before we start to talk a little bit about the quokka and the habitat and what I thought when designing and building the habitat, I firstly wanted to say a little thank you to everyone, because I, as you might know, had a relatively big break from Planet Zoo and creating content on YouTube. And I came back last week. I did the koala habitat, and shortly after I also did a little speculation on the next DLC. So if you haven't seen that yet, go ahead and check that out too. And in this week I gained, I believe, a little over 30 new followers, which is quite a lot, seeing like the whole size of my channel and then gaining 30 new people in just 1 week. So thank you to everyone who watched my video, who liked them, who commented on them, and also followed my channel now. So welcome to my channel, and I hope you will enjoy all of the new episodes that are to come. I am currently like super motivated and inspired by a lot of things, and I just have so much fun building in Planet Zoo right now. So I probably will be more active in the next weeks or maybe even months on YouTube and with Planet Zoo, and I'm also extremely excited of the next DLC whenever this is to come. So I will probably do a lot more for the next DLC than I did with the last 2. As you can see, the Quokka came out with the Oceania pack, which was prior to the Eurasia pack. That was the very last one at the moment. So I am a little late on the clock with the animals, and also especially with the Eurasia animals. I only did like the wild boar for the Zeus Discord community zoo. And other than that, I didn't really do anything for the Eurasian pack because it pretty much fell right when I had no motivation and had this big break. I was also in the meantime building something for the Wolverine, which will be in another section of this zoo that we are currently in, but it is not finished, and I think I want to finish the Tiki Town area first, and also put out all the videos for Tiki Town pretty much back to back. Maybe I will interrupt this when the next DLC will come out, so that I can start building something right after the DLC is released. But honestly, we will see. We don't know what is going to happen with the next DLC, when it is going to come out. We haven't really heard anything from Planet Zoo at the point where I'm recording this voiceover. So we will see. But you will definitely see something from me when the new pack comes out. Now finally, to talk a little bit about the Quokka and the habitat. Obviously I had already somewhat of a limited space starting this habitat, because I have to fit 4 habitats within this building. And as you have seen already, the koala has its outside area next to the entry of this tropical house, and then the quokka and the other 2 animals will have their outside areas on the side, right sides next to each other, on the side of this building. So the idea is that when the animal is, for example, on the outside, they can come in, then they have this little inside area, and then after that they come into the backstage area. So the idea obviously for this tropical house is that when the temperatures are sinking, and it is getting cold, since the zoo is located in a temperate area in Europe, the winters get pretty cold and chilly, so it is probably too cold for the quokkas and also the other animals within this house to be outside all winter long. So I had to make sure that all of the animals get a really nice and cozy and relatively big indoor area, so that they can be housed inside this area throughout the winter when the temperatures are getting too cold for these animals. And of course, I made sure to make the indoor area as cozy as possible for the animals and also as naturalistic as possible, so that the guests feel like wandering above the forest of Oceania when they walk over this little bridge within this building. The animals have a lot of space to walk underneath this bridge, so they can surely pass it underneath and just have a nice cozy winter inside this tropical house, or just when they feel like it and don't want to be outside. Obviously, there might also be reasons to separate some animals, so it is technically possible to have some of the animals only on the inside area and some on the outside area, and of course there is a sliding door in between to separate those 2 areas. Other than that, there's also a relatively spacious backstage area where the animals can be kept in, for example, for maintenance and cleaning purposes, so that the staff can freely move around in the indoor and outdoor area, and also to separate maybe sick animals or animals that need to be treated, or just for a general checkup of the animals. And I also decided to divide the backstage area into 2 little parts, so technically animals could also be separated within the backstage area. So there's a lot of options for the staff to manage the population of the quokkas within this habitat. The idea for the general design of the indoor part from the tropical house is from a zoo visit that I did last year, and they had a relatively similar tropical house. Obviously the interior was different, but the idea of having this bridge and then it looking like you are walking above the forest was like pretty much the same as in this tropical house that I visited last year. They didn't have like koalas and quokkas and stuff like that in there. They had mostly birds, and they had some sloths moving around freely within this building. And I really loved the idea, and I just had to recreate it. And since all of the Oceanian animals that will be housed inside this house are all really small, so it just fit perfectly for them to move around freely under the bridge without making the bridge unnecessarily high. So it was just the perfect inspiration and perfect execution for this house. While looking for inspiration for a quokka habitat itself, it was honestly a little bit hard because I couldn't really find anything online or like multiple pictures of quokka habitats. I feel like not many zoos maybe keep quokka habitats or quokkas in the zoo, so there's not that much inspiration out there. I of course also took inspiration from other YouTube creators that already built something for the quokkas, and I also tried to keep it relatively similar to the koala habitat, so it looks cohesive with one another and doesn't look like a completely different like habitat. Normally, before I start building something for an animal, I always try to search for best practice guidelines of these animals for zoos, which are basically like an instruction how to keep the animal in a zoo when it comes to how to design the habitat, what to watch out for, how big something would need to be, how much water they need, and all these little details that you might don't know just by knowing the animal itself. So I obviously tried to look for something for quokkas, but also there it was relatively hard to find something. The only like really important things for me while building this habitat were that the quokka actually needs a really dense foliage so that they can feel safe within the habitat. Obviously, they are a pretty small animal. There would be like easy prey for other animals, so they require a thick vegetation to feel safe within the habitat. So I try to make sure to make it relatively dense and also use more of like higher foliage so they have something above them. So for example, some birds couldn't technically hunt them. Of course, they cannot be hunted in a zoo, but the animal still wants to feel safe. So I made sure to make that without like putting too much in so that the animal cannot move around, because of course this is a game and the animals have a traversable area. But honestly, the traversable area for the quokka is so great. I always check the traversable area in like an empty habitat before I start building something or putting them in a habitat where I have like some items lying around, and I have like some doors or like openings in a wall to see how small I can make an opening within a wall so that the animal can still walk through there. And also I place down, for example, these little pebble piles that you can see me using within this habitat to see if they can actually walk over them, how good they can walk over them. And honestly, the traversable area for the quokka is really great. They can walk over almost anything. They can use a lot of the habitat or a lot of the area from the habitat. And you can sometimes also see the quokkas being almost in the foliage itself, because they can just get super close to the plants and the grasses and stones and everything. So it looks like super realistic, and sometimes they just hide a little bit within the foliage, and I just absolutely love it. Comparing it, for example, the koala, which has a horrible traversable area. I'm so sorry to say that, Frontier, but the traversable area of the koala and also a lot of the other base game animals are just really bad. It was really hard building something for the koala. As I said, I built the koala right before I built the quokka habitat, and the difference is just insane. I could pretty much do anything with the quokka habitat that I wanted and completely feel free to design it the way I wanted to. Because I knew the quokkas will have enough room to move around in it. And the koalas were just the complete opposite. They were so hard to manage, or to manage the habitat to make it look good and like dense and with a lot of plants and foliage, but still having them like move around enough within the habitat so they can access everything. And so it looks somewhat real because it's just so bad. They just cannot walk over some of the plants, some of these little leaf litters that we have, especially also smaller rocks. They just cannot walk over them. So it was extremely hard and not that much fun to build because it was so hard to make it practical. I obviously built in sandbox mode, so it technically doesn't need to be like completely practical, but I still want the animals to move around within the habitat enough so that they can access all of the habitat basically, so it also looks real. So yeah, that was a nightmare, but building something with a quokka now was just awesome because I could do whatever I wanted, and I put down the quokkas within the habitat after I finished it, and I didn't even have to readjust some things because they could access enough of the habitat where I said, okay, I am more than happy with that. I can leave everything where it is and just enjoy the habitat, you know? As you can see me building the outside area for the quokkas right now, I of course made it relatively similar to the indoor area, as I said, to make everything look cohesive. And for the barrier, I had an inspiration from a like petting zoo visit that I did like just like a month ago, and they had this prairie dog habitat with really similar barriers as I did, besides the one with the glass. But I took the inspiration because I don't know why, but I really just loved the design of it. It was really simple yet practical without looking like too modern or too old. So I really liked it, just with the stone wall and then having this little log over it. And since the animal or the quokka is relatively small and the habitat is a little bit lower than the level that the guests are walking on, I decided to also include some glass panels so that you can see the animals better, and also of course that smaller people like kids can also see the animals like really great without having troubles looking over the barrier. And then for the foliage work, it was, as I said, very similar to the work that I did on the inside. I firstly made sure to cover everything enough with grass. As you might have seen for the indoor area, I painted with just a normal painting tool in the Terra tab, like paths within the habitat, so that I was basically thinking about where would the animals most likely walk around to access the different areas within the habitat, to access like the water area and the enrichment items. So I do this because I basically want to see where the animal would walk and where the animals would most likely walk around. They would use these paths more often, and also there wouldn't be as much foliage and not as much grass on these areas because they would just walk over it a lot. So I also use this, of course, to have enough traversable area for the animals, besides the fact that the quokka has a really great traversable area, but also for other animals I use this technique to see where I should leave it relatively open. Then I make like little islands of, for example, in this habitat of rocks, and then of course of grass, where the animals wouldn't really walk around very often. And then I make these little islands and build them with also bigger trees. So basically I start with rocks, then I plant the grass, and then when I really see where the pathing is and where these little like foliage islands are going to be, then I start to place the bigger plants like the palms and ferns that I used, or also of course other trees if you're building a non-tropical habitat. And then I start using smaller plants to cover it up to make these little islands a little denser. And then I also use some like broken down trees and logs to add more like of a natural look to the habitat, and also for the animals to like maybe walk over them, scratch themselves on them, or just to like hide behind a fallen down tree and stuff like that. So this is basically the normal like path that I'm going while designing my habitats, and honestly it works really great for me. So maybe if you don't know how to make like bigger areas interesting, of course this habitat is relatively small, but you can use the same technique also for bigger habitats. Of course, the bigger the animal, the bigger the habitat, and also the bigger are these little pathings that are going through the habitat. And to make the background look a little bit more interesting and to add more foliage within the habitat, I also like to put plants on top of the like back wall, like here I did with this rock wall. So there would be like a little bit of a gap behind that where they could be put soil down there and then plant some plants in there. Now moving to the backstage area, there was already basically the base done for the backstage area itself. As you have seen in the like cinematic route at the very beginning, and as you will see in the cinematic shots at the very end, I decorated the backstage area for the staff with like a little prepping area, or basically like a little kitchen, and also with like basic items for them to like clean and maintain the habitat. So I already did that in the last episode, so if you want to see that, you can look at the koala episode right after this one. So I basically only had to do the like area for the Quokkas itself, and this time I did it like really simple. I only used these like DIY wooden fences. The quokka is a really small animal, so the barriers really do not have to be that big. And I also made them really simple with just this wood, and then I used the normal habitat door for the staff to access the backstage area so that they can put down water and also put down food for the animals. And then I DIY'd this little like separation door between the little sections within the backstage area. This could be left open throughout most of the time, and if there would be like any case where the animals need to be separated, or where there would be like one or multiple animals sick, for example, they could be held in the bigger part of it so that they can be kept in there safe and sound for the animal in the backstage area. And also I of course made sure to put like a little bit of enrichment down with some logs. I wanted to use the habitat enrichment item, this little log where they can walk through, but because of the nearby habitat barrier and also the door, I couldn't really fit it. The game simply wouldn't let me place it. And as you have seen, I also use these little like nesting boxes. I've done them some months ago and I still use them because they're really simple, and I thought especially for such small animals these little nesting boxes would be great, so they don't just have to lay on like the floor, just on the hay bedding, but they can also have these little nesting boxes where they can retreat and be like in their little home or in their little cave and be like very secure. And I also put down some heating lamps so that the animals can heat themselves up, especially during the colder periods of the year. And we are almost at the very end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and that you love the way I designed this habitat for the quokka and how I continued the tropical house. Please leave a like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet so you don't miss any videos that are coming up. But don't leave this video yet, because there are some cinematics to come, so I wish you a lot of fun with the cinematics to see some more detailed shots of the habitat I did, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Until then, bye guys!